How's it going, everybody? We're here for episode 2 of Puck Drop with Cutting Edge. The date is June 4th, and as we all know, the Rangers are dead, along with our hopes and dreams. The only person who is probably the happiest person on the planet right now is our guest for today, our special guest, Mr. Johnny Hero. We're going to have him talking hockey, talking Rangers, talking playoffs. Um, which is going to be absolutely infuriating for Steve and I. Um, but there's not a person here who knows more about hockey than Johnny. Um, so just I guess we'll kick it off first. I think at the end of the day, Florida was the better team. They were the better team all series. Even the 2 games that the Rangers won, Florida was the better team. They played better playoff hockey. They were deeper. They were meaner. They were physical. They were just they
Just
just
wanted it more.
yeah.
Plain
I
and
mean
simple. Just
yeah,
wanted it more.
plain and simple. They were just the They played better playoff hockey. We kind of talked about it in the last episode. That's they look like the team that went to the Stanley Cup Final last year, and they look like a team that knows how to get there, knows how to get it done. That was one step away. Um, Kind of like what we talked about last year as far as building teams. They they bought into their coach's wisdom, their coach's system. Paul Maurice, I think, is doing a great job with that team. Everybody's playing the right way, playing the way they want, and that's as a team. When you look at the way the team's built, they got 3 lines that are almost exactly the same, right? You got a playmaker, you got a skill guy, and you got a grinder and they just never stop, and they just hammer you, and they pound away, they wear you down, and they got good goaltending at the right time. They got good D, and they just know how to win, and they know how to play playoff hockey. At the end of the day, you see these teams that win the cup, and it's not always, as you see with the quote unquote President's Trophy curse, it's not always the best team in the regular season. You get to the cup final or you get to the playoffs, and the teams that make the deepest run, once you get in, the game changes and you start playing playoff hockey. And the teams that make these deep runs all have that common theme. They have the depth, they have the style, and they kind of and they make it work, right? And some teams just play better playoff hockey than other teams, and that's why you always see it's not always the most skilled team that wins. It's the team that plays the best as a team, plays the best playoff hockey, and right now, Florida's doing it. I think Edmonton. I think it's going to be a great series. I think when you look at the numbers, they're 2 different styles of team, right? Edmonton's more that high end skilled team, um, where Florida's that ground and pound, wear you down kind of team, and we'll see what wins,
Yeah,
right?
honestly, I think Florida's gonna work the Oilers. If I'm being honest, but that's just me.
Yeah, I mean my gut tells me that too, but I don't know. I don't know. Every time you think you've got things figured out, you just don't know. And we got Johnny here too. Let's see Johnny's thoughts. What are your thoughts on the final, Johnny?
Well, I just thought from watching the Rangers Panthers series that Panthers gave up a lot of odd man rushes and breakaways, and I think that McDavid and Draisaitl and the firepower on the Oilers are going to finish those chances more consistently than the Rangers were, and I also think their speed is going to create more of those opportunities. And I think that having 200 plus point guys on one team is going to be very difficult for them to stop.
Yeah, no, and those are all really great points, and I agree with that. And you look at it in the sense of if you compare these teams, break them down, high end talent, who's got the top talent? Edmonton. Depth, I think Florida might be a little deeper. Goaltending, you give the edge to Florida. I don't think Skinner's that good.
Like a
Shaky at
JV
times.
goalie back there.
Yeah, but again,
Oh
you
yeah.
don't know what kind of Skinner is going to show up. Is it going to be the Skinner that got benched or the Skinner who came back after getting benched and played great? You just don't know. It's so inconsistent. Special teams, Edmonton, their power play is lethal, and nobody really talks about their penalty killing, how good their penalty killing is. Um, you know, Dallas really thrived in the playoffs living off of power play. They had the worst 5-on-5 production of the final 4 teams. Um, everybody loved talking about the Rangers power play and all that, but it was Dallas had just as good, if not better, power play than the Rangers did, and Edmonton shut them down. Everybody talks about the elite power play that they have. Their penalty killing is just as good. So you look at the special teams um, difference, and Edmonton really has the edge. The key to Florida is the way Florida plays. As long as they keep it close, they're gonna have a chance in the third period because they wear you
They
down.
can also lock you down.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they have good defensemen, like solid defensemen who are big and strong and will keep you,
Yeah.
contain you. So
They break the puck out of the zone really well, and their D does a good job of pinning you deep as well. In the sense of if you look at the Rangers series, Florida was tougher on them because their forwards are strong on the forecheck, but their D was so strong on the wall and the breakout too. They would pinch down and they would cut off the wingers, and the wingers
like the Rangers can get any high danger scoring chances
Yeah.
at all.
No,
it was just like pitiful.
I totally agree.
It was
And
tough watching.
if you notice as the season went on, it went a lot more in the D zone for the Rangers. They started kind of panic throwing the puck. You look at a lot of the turnovers they caused.
Bailout plays.
A lot of bailout
No
plays.
taking a hit to make a play.
Yep.
Just aimlessly throwing the puck on the boards. Like you saw Panarin, just like I don't know, the guy was like out to lunch, but like he just threw the puck, blind pass right to a guy a couple times, and it's like, it's not how you're gonna it's not how you're gonna win. You gotta get in dirty and get those pucks out.
It gets to a point where, look, I don't care if you're a first year bantam or if you're an NHL player. It gets to a point where you're tired of getting hit. You're not going to want to get hit anymore, and especially at the professional level, when these guys are flying at 25, 30 miles an hour and they're 200 pounds, just absolutely dummying you in the corner, shift after shift after shift. It sucks. You're not going to want that puck on your stick, right? And that's what it came down to, where like I said, how Florida was just tougher, and how many turnovers are caused because the defenseman would either do the soft backhand, try to do a soft backhand chip off the boards with a guy on their back, or the winger throws it up to their point. As a coach, you yell at your peewees for doing that. If you're the winger, that's the guy you're supposed to be defending against, and you're giving it to him. Right? How many times do you see the professionals doing that? Because Florida was on them. Florida just gave them not a second to breathe, and they're going to have to do that against two of the best players on the planet for Florida with Draisaitl and McDavid. It's such a huge task, but
I mean, I think a team like that has the opportunity to be able to do that. They
could.
They shut down the Rangers, big top three guys. I think they could do the same. I mean, granted, McDavid and Draisaitl are probably definitely a lot more skilled than Kreider, Mika, and Panarin. But still, I think I'm telling you, that defense core is ridiculously good, and I think they could shut them down. But I guess we'll see. I mean, McDavid's such a good hockey player. He makes some crazy plays. So I don't know. But
I think the one thing too that we don't really give Edmonton enough credit for, I think they're tougher than we give them credit for. I think they are physically stronger and tougher. When you got guys like Kane, and you got Hyman's kind of a grindy, you can score, right? And Draisaitl and McDavid, they're not afraid to bang bodies, and I think there's going to be a part of that where that core, they're tired of not getting over that hump. You can kind of see it in their play. They're tired of getting so close. And while hockey players do a good job if they manage the media and they manage the, there's no way they're human. There's no way they don't hear the chatter, right? Of okay, this is our time to get over the hump. I'm sick and tired of not getting over the hump.
I think the difference. I do think Edmonton is going to win the series. I do think that the difference is the coaching change. Knobloch had a lot of those guys, or seen a lot of those guys play in major juniors. He coached McDavid for the Erie Otters, and they were one of the number one teams in the CHL for a long period of time. I think he's got a good vibe with that team. They were 10 points out of a playoff spot when he took over, and now look at them, and their penalty kill is one of the best in the league. I think their coach has a really good vibe for that team. And I know that the Florida's D are going to be stingy, but if you look at the Dallas series, that game where they clinched going to the Stanley Cup, they get 10 shots on goal and scored twice, right?
Right.
I think they're elite finishers, and I think they're not going to need that many chances to score. I think they score at a high enough clip where they're going to find the back of the net just enough. And they just got to, and Skinner's just got to hang in there, right? Just
Yep.
make all the saves he can make, nothing too crazy, but make the simple saves. Don't let any softies in, and I think they're going to be all right.
Yeah, it's you look at the series. It's the key is going to be if there's a game like there was in that clinching game where they only have 10 shots on goal and it's like a 1-goal game and Florida keeps it close and Florida's hanging around, will they be able to have enough gas in the tank to withstand what Florida does? I mean, Florida was the best third period team in the league all season and in the playoffs, and I think that's a testament to the way they play. It's a testament to of we're just going to have more gas in the tank than the other team. And as long as we keep it close, we're going to have enough to get over that hump and get the tying goal or get that put away goal in a 1-goal game if they're winning, right? Where we're going to wear you down. And Edmonton has the talent to do it. They've got the guys to do it. Let's just see. It's Edmonton. I feel like the West has just been so hard to predict. Every time you kind of have an idea as to what's going to happen, it just doesn't.
Yeah, I think that Edmonton's going to be a little better at stretching the zone too, so they're not going to be able to D aren't going to be able to pinch down as hard as they were on the Rangers' wings and make all the plays under pressure. I think that stretch is going to give Edmonton a little bit more time in their D zone than the Rangers had because their forwards are so dangerous in open ice, and I think that's going to relieve some of the pressure on them for the series.
Yeah, no, that's definitely possible because one of the biggest struggles you see is the Rangers were just so soft along the boards. They couldn't get the puck. They didn't get that opportunity. And
they also couldn't find open ice at
Yeah.
all. So I think that, like what Johnny was saying, that them being able to stretch out the ice a little bit, have their forwards get up in the play, I think they can really do some damage to that.
Yeah.
They need to stretch out the ice and get some open ice.
yeah, and Edmonton's top end talent is so good at creating space and creating ice and creating really something out of nothing. How many goals do you see this team score where they look dead in the water? You got guys trapped in the corner, and then all of a sudden McDavid does something crazy and steps out and scores a goal, or Draisaitl, or any of these guys. And I think the one guy we haven't talked about at all is Bouchard. Don't forget you have an elite scorer at the point, a true elite defenseman in this league, in Evan Bouchard, who really isn't talked about enough, and he can be an X factor in this series.
I think that this series is going to be a lot like the Penguins-Nashville series when the Penguins won their second of the back-to-back Stanley Cups. Remember, kids, the fastest way to get better at hockey is just become a Penguins fan, and you'll fly right up the rankings. But no, in that series too, like I thought the Nashville-Penn series, that Nashville was the better team almost every single game. Right, I thought they were deeper, but the high-end skill when they got those chances on 2-on-1s, they capitalized every time. I thought that was the difference and why the Pens won the cup too. I'm hoping that Edmonton could do the same.
Yeah, I mean, either way, no matter who you're rooting for in the series, it is you got two good storylines in these playoffs, right? You got Edmonton with McDavid, and sometimes you forget that he's already been in the league for 8 years, and he's been the best player in the league for how long? Best player on the planet. A chance for him to get his first cup. And then you have Florida, a team that's never won the cup. You have a chance for them to win their first cup in the franchise. And there's a lot of guys on that team too who have been grinding away.
They're hungry.
They're hungry. They were here. They were there last year. They got swept by Vegas, and they're sometimes you gotta lose to learn how to win, and they might be in a position to do that. I think a lot of those players kind of took that to heart, and they're taking this opportunity and taking last year's loss as an opportunity to take the next step. And if you look back at the big trade that they made, that everybody thought was so crazy between them and Calgary, that really laid the foundation to this team, and it changed the whole culture. It changed the whole philosophy of this team. It made them tougher. You bring in a guy like Kachuk versus Huberdeau, where they're two very different types of players, and they bring two very different styles of the game to the table. And Kachuk fits more of that fits more into what Paul Maurice is trying to do with his team than Huberdeau does. It's you
He's
got
nails too.
yeah, he's tough as
just
nails.
Like, would you want to ever play against that guy? No. Like, he's
Yeah,
nuts
absolutely
too.
not. He'll
But
come. Yeah,
he'll just go right through you. He just doesn't care. It's awesome to watch, but
he'll
yeah,
go
no, it's
through you. He'll
crazy.
punch you in your teeth. He'll steal your lunch money. He'll score 2 goals and laugh in your face and do it all again tomorrow. Like that's the kind of player you want on your team. It's the player that you love if he's on your team. You hate him if he's on the other
You just
team.
hate that him like chewing on his mouthpiece the whole game.
Yeah, he's fish hooking right there, right?
That
It's
was
like,
Kreider's best play, right? Thrown in the stand.
but that really changed the whole culture of that team. We talked about in the last episode culture and creating that positive environment and creating an identity for a team. That's what Florida did. They went out and they created an identity. This is what we want to be, and this is our team as a whole is going to buy into this identity and buy into this culture, and that is what's made them successful. And to kind of translate that to the youth hockey industry, it's good teams have an identity, right? Whether it's youth hockey, high school hockey, you need to have an identity. Who are you as a team? What kind of style are you going to play? And you need all your players on board, right? Starts with your leadership and it goes all the way down to your fourth line guys. If you win as teams, right? You don't win because you have 3 good players on your team. You win because your team plays as a team. And that's what Florida's doing right now. And so is Edmonton. Don't get me wrong. I think a big difference this year is they're not just relying on their 2 top guns. They're winning as a team.
Yeah, a lot more balanced.
They're a lot more balanced than they've been in the past. And that's why they're in the final this year as opposed to getting bounced in the playoffs like they've been the past couple of years. And the coaching I think plays a huge part in it too. But again, it comes back to culture and identity. Knobloch came in, created a new identity, created a new culture. And the leadership, the players, they all bought into it. And that makes those are the intangibles that nobody can see on paper, that you can't put on a stat. And as a coach, that's what you have to look for if you're creating a team, if you're building something. It's not about just, let me make these guys as skilled as possible. Skill, 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 skill. It's like all the skill in the world, yes, that's important, obviously. But if you don't have an identity, you don't have a culture, and your team isn't playing as a team, all the skill in the world, you're going to get beat by a better team. The one crazy thing that always fascinates me after these playoffs, when teams get eliminated, are the crazy injuries, right? That you hear these players are playing through. Like a couple of years ago, Joe Thornton's playing an entire playoff series with a torn ACL.
Last year to Chuck with this broken sternum.
Broken sternum.
That's insane. I can't imagine just getting hit like with a broken sternum. That's nuts. Like,
how do you breathe?
Yeah, that's
like
just wild.
Carlson, same thing. He's like missing an ankle. Like his ankle was just gone. They just came out today. Trouba, same thing, missing a chunk of his ankle. Yeah. Ryan McDonough years ago, he had a broken foot.
Freezing his foot into his skate.
Yeah, they had to literally freeze his foot so he couldn't feel anything. It's Crosby. Didn't Crosby lose like the tip of his finger in a game or something like that?
Well, he ate that puck the once. I'm pretty sure he chopped off Mark Stock's finger.
Yeah.
What a guy.
Crosby. Ugh.
What a guy.
The Zuccarello the one year took the puck to the ear. He had to like relearn how to talk.
Yeah.
It's nuts. The injuries that these players play through.
Gotta get him some rest days though, like the NBA.
Yeah. The question though, at one point, do you sit there and say, I'm gonna play through this injury versus I'm more of a hindrance to my team playing through this injury? Where's that line?
Well, that's a great question, Coach.
Where is that line?
I don't know. I mean, I guess it's just see how you feel. Like you're in practice, you get hurt in the game before, get into practice, or like try to do whatever recovery routine you can possibly figure out. But I don't know. I mean, just see how it feels. If you can play through it, I mean, go for it. But I don't know. That's a tough one.
I think you gotta let him play. I think it makes their teammates rally around him, right? And it shows like commitment, especially if it's one of your better guys sucking it up through a big injury and pushing through. I think it rallies the troops. I could see the point where it could be a detriment, right? But I think it really brings everybody together, right? How many times did teams win hockey games when they don't have their best player, or even like your youth team wins hockey games when you don't have your best player because everyone else is working harder, right? So I think even that they're in the lineup showing that they're out there, you don't have to use them as much as you would normally use them, but I think just having them out there means a lot to the boys.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there's a part of an aura to your best player, right? And there's a reason your best players are your best players, and there's a reason your best players are leaders on the team too. And having them out there, I agree.
Nah,
It's
I'd be fired up if I saw my best player on my team was just like didn't know if he was playing, like wasn't sure if he was coming in practice during the week during practice, and then like come like Friday night game time, he's just like in the suit, ready to go. Like I am gonna be so charged up, dude. So
yeah. No, it happens like any of your just true tough guys, any of your guys who are just tough as nails. I mean, Ryan Lindgren, how many times you see him? He goes down the tunnel, everybody's like, "Oh, great." He's out. This is gonna stink, and then he comes back down the tunnel, and he's just got like he just looks like he got hit in the face with a shovel, and it's
straight nails.
Yeah, I agree, Johnny.
He's got a lot more time to rest now. Lindgren's got a lot of time to rest now. Get on the golf course, hit a few.
Oh
maybe
yeah,
down the middle.
He'll hit up any of his buddies on the Penguins to come play with him. The Penguins might be a little better though. They've been having more time this year on the golf course to practice.
A lot of rest and relaxation there.
But no, it's and now it's tough. It's you sit there and if you're a Rangers fan, you look into the next season as to where did you go wrong? What changes do you have to make, and what of this core do you have to blow up? It's when you look at these teams, not just the Rangers, but any of these teams, a team like Dallas is kind of the same way, where another year you got so close. And if you listen to the post game interview with Sagan, he makes a good point, and a lot of players say it too. Sometimes you don't realize how hard it is to win a cup. It is so hard to win a Stanley Cup, and you get so close. And some teams, you have great teams with great players that just never win cups.
Well, there's so much. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. There's so much parity in the league now. Like honestly, anyone can win.
Yeah.
These teams are all great. There's so many good hockey players on all these teams that make it in, and it just flip of a switch. This regular season ends, and it's just a whole new ballgame because team could be okay in the regular season and just be absolutely tough to play against. They shut you down, right? And it goes back to coaching as well, and just getting the guys going.
How many years do you see, best team in the league? Last year, Boston broke the record for best team ever in the regular season. They get bounced in the first round by Florida, right?
That happened to Tampa too. The same year they set the record for wins, they got knocked out in the first round by Columbus, I believe.
Yeah, and before that was Detroit. Detroit knocked out first round when they had the record before Tampa. So once you get to the playoffs, all these teams are so good, and that's why it's such a tough job for an NHL GM, where you sit there and you say, we've been so good for so long. What needs to be done to get to make the next step? You have to look at your core of the team. Does this core have what it takes? Is this core good enough to win a Stanley Cup? And sometimes the answer is yes. Sometimes the answer is no. But you have to try to figure out and make your best judgment call to figure it out. Where, it's you go back to the Kachuk trade. Both of those GMs were in that same boat. We're close. Is trading my superstar the right call, right? It worked out for Florida. It has not worked out for Calgary. Calgary's been lost since that trade, so it goes both ways. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You look at, obviously we're Rangers, we talk about the Rangers. You look back at now Chris Drury. Does he turn around and does he trade Panarin? Does he trade Kreider or Zibanejad? If he does that, you look down the road a few years, you could sit there and say, was that the right move? The Rangers did it years ago when they dumped off McDonough, they dumped off all these guys, and when they got Zibanejad, they traded Derek Brassard, a guy who everybody loved, and it worked out for them in a way. They've been very good. They haven't gotten over that hump. When they traded McDonough and JT Miller for a bunch of nobodies, a bunch of scrubs. That didn't work out. So it's such a hard decision for a GM when you look at your team as a whole of, What's the right move? I don't envy teams like this. Like I said, the Rangers GM, Drury, Dallas's GM, they have a same tough decision to make. What moves do we make to get over that? Other teams, Winnipeg, another team that was so great in the regular season, get bounced in the first round. What do they got to do to take the next step, right? You know, and and you have other teams. I mean, look at the other teams that didn't make the playoffs who had such high expectations. Look at a team like the Devils. What did the Devils do? Right? What did the Devils do? Everybody expected them to take a huge jump, and they were probably the biggest disappointment of the year.
Yeah.
Like you said, your team, Johnny, the Penguins.
Well,
If like, what do you do if you're the Penguins? Like, what your opinion, Johnny, on the Penguins right now? Is kind of Pittsburgh's on that fringe of, do you let it ride with your core? Do they have one left in them, or what do you do?
I think you ride with the core another year. I think you try to keep Crosby of the three, Malkin, Crosby, and Letang. I really just think it was goaltending for us and D. I think we need D that like to play D. We need centers that can win draws in big areas and big times of the game. And then I really just think we need goaltending. When we switched into Delkovich for that last run of the season, like once again, he was on that Erie Otters team. I got to watch him play a lot in juniors, and he was phenomenal in big games. And then you saw it at the end of the season when we had good, consistent goaltending from Nedeljkovic, that the run we went on. I think we lost one in our last 10, 11 games, and unfortunately that one loss kept us out of the playoffs. But I think we could do it with the right goaltending, a few small grab two defensive defensemen and a D center, and I think we'll give it one last shot. I think we have one more run in us, hopefully.
I hope not. I hope not. But yeah, it's tough, man. What, like, you look at these players, what is it? What are the intangibles? It's so hard to, because all these players are so good. Even the fourth liners. You take a fourth liner and you put him on the ice, who you sit there as a fan and like, oh man, this guy stinks, right? You look at a guy like Ryan Reeves, right? Who he's out there just out there to fight and whatnot. But you put him out there and do skill stuff. He's so good. He's so skilled compared to 99% of the hockey players in the world. A guy like Matt Rempe. And me as a Rangers fan, I do not like Matt Rempe. I think he stinks. But for what he brings, he is, again, highly skilled player in the grand scheme of things when you have the overall percentage of players. So that's why the top of the top are so good. I just want to kick it to Johnny real quick, to just, not from a playoff perspective, but now you've coached a lot of really, really good players in your life, and you've seen some players who have gone on to take that next step and play D1 hockey, play high-end juniors, and you have Brandon who got drafted in the NHL, and you've also coached plenty of players who were so good at a young age and didn't really, take the next step. What is your biggest opinion on players? What's the biggest difference?
Oh, that's a great question. I think the biggest difference is, like, a lot of people say it's with the kids that are really good when they're little. A lot of parents say they get burnt out, but in my opinion, the kids don't really get burnt out. It's just from being so good when they're little, they don't face adversity until they're much older. And I think if you learn to overcome adversity, like when you're younger, around 10 to like 15, it's a lot more easy to overcome than if you're hitting adversity for the first time when you're like 18 to 22, right? Everyone's been telling you you're so good for so long, then you're finally at a high enough level where you're not the best anymore. And I just don't think people are used to having to work and used to the criticism. And I think that's the biggest thing, is how you respond to adversity. And I think that's what happens in the playoffs too, is like, you always hear like, oh, it's like for the Rangers, their first 7 games they won, they didn't really face any adversity, right? And that's the same thing with that I think that's why the President's Cup winners never really win the Stanley Cup that often, is because they're not faced with too much adversity throughout the season to learn from it. Like you see it with, I'm sure that's what Cooper said when Tampa Bay lost after setting the wins record, and I'm pretty sure Boston had the same feeling. They just weren't tested enough during the year and weren't ready to respond to that adversity.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I mean, and that's a good point, especially to like the Rangers fans who want to burn it all down and blow it all up. Tampa Bay won the President's Trophy. They got swept, right?
Yeah.
They got swept by Columbus in the first round, and all they did was retool. They didn't blow it up. They kept the same core. They retooled, and all they did was come back and win back-to-back Stanley Cups, right? So adversity. That's a good point, Johnny.
Yeah, it's also like you also saw it and it's in all sports too, at all high levels. Like you saw it when Virginia in the NCAA, they were the number one overall seed. They lost to the 16, right? And then the next year they came back and they won the whole thing.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's you gotta. I've been saying it. You gotta know how to lose before you can know how to win. You gotta, and it's just obviously you always want to win, 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 but sometimes it takes, you know, seeing what you did wrong and building off of what you did wrong. That's growth, right? Growth doesn't come from constantly winning. Growth comes from failing and learning from your mistakes. I think that's a big part. I go back to my high school team that I coach. 2 years ago, we won 6 games. When this year, we won 17. We took our beating 2 years ago, and we learned from it. We kept the core together. I only had 3 graduating seniors, and you know that that group learned from it, and they faced that adversity. And as they got a year older, they took it to the next level, and they had a really good season. So I think that there's a big part of that, Johnny, where it's Florida Panthers, same thing. They lost last year in the Cup Final. Look at them now. They're a completely different monster. I'm sure last year there was a small part of it of the team and fans are, we're just happy to be here kind of thing. You'll never hear that from the players. But now all right, hey, we lost last year. We know that we have an idea as to how to fix this.
Well, yeah, I think it's like accepting where your shortcomings, right? You got to accept it. And like I think Florida was a good example of that because I believe the year they won the President's Trophy the year before they traded Huberto, right, for Kachuk, and I think you got to accept it, and I think that's a big part, and that's hard to do sometimes, right? You have a lot of pride, and sometimes you got to let it go, accept that this isn't going to work, and take a new route from there.
Yeah, and especially when you're dealing with people. There's a business side, and at the end of the day, it's professional. This is the NHL's professional business, but there's a people side to it too. And these professional athletes are people, and they are friends, and they become family, and that's where it gets so hard. And it's a trickle down all the way until the lowest levels of youth hockey. You see a tryout season, people get all crazy, and we're talking about people and relationships and personal relationships and kids.
Yeah.
And you know, sometimes it's hard when you come around the tryout season, and it's hard to not want to run it back with the group, especially if you have a good group. And sometimes you have to make those hard decisions during tryouts, and like Johnny said, learning from your shortcomings and realizing where you want to move forward. And I feel like if you're a youth hockey organization, your youth hockey group, you have to figure out what your goal is for your team. If your goal is for your team to, you're there to have fun, which is totally fine. You can have a team where, again, these are kids. This should be fun. You should be having fun. And you want it to just be, you want to run back with your team. You win what you win. You lose, it doesn't matter. Then that's how you build your team. But if you're looking to build a high-end competitive tier 1 team, sometimes you have to make cuts, and sometimes you have to cut kids who have been with your team for a long time. And that's not easy to do. And it's learning from your shortcomings, unfortunately, sometimes. And that's where it gets hard, you know?
Yeah, and I think Kevin brought up a good point about just like knowing your personnel and accepting that the players are actually people. And I hope that some of the parents listening to this will take that advice for their kids. Like your kids are only kid once, like you should be enjoying this and getting to know them and helping them grow. It shouldn't be going to the rink is torture. It shouldn't be torture for them after the game in the car. Like you only get one lifetime with your kids. You should and focus on them as children and as people and as turning into young adults than what their statistics are and the craziness of hockey. Just remember that your kids are people too, and they deserve to be treated like that away from the rink. But I have to go on the ice now. Thanks for having me on the puck drop. It's an awesome experience. Let's go Pens. Rangers stink. Have a great day.
Thanks. Thanks, Johnny.
I'm down to do that more often.
Thanks, Johnny. It was
Such a
awesome
beauty.
having Johnny on the podcast. For anyone who has physically been here and come to Cutting Edge, it's the best. Johnny's awesome. So we're just gonna wrap it up here. I think that was some great conversation. I hope that if you're listening to this again, like we said last time, you take some of this to heart. And again, our podcast is here is to inform, to educate, and maybe change perspectives about things or help people along the way. Um, for Puck Drop with Cutting Edge, I am Kevin Geist. I'm here with my good friend Steve.
Have it going, guys.
And I would say let's go Rangers, but we're out and we're dead. So enjoy the Stanley Cup Final, and we hope to see you at the rink sometime soon.
Have it going, guys. Bye-bye.